What's up, everybody? Hello and welcome to episode number 312 of the VK Bros with Jason and Alex VK. Jam-packed show again this week. Alex, how are you this week? Make it short, make it brief, because we've got a lot of stuff to get into.
The show is as jam-packed as my throat. I've just got back from the ENT, and apparently I have extremely inflamed tonsils.
Oh, how'd you get those, Alex? Living in Brisbane, Greensville for too long.
Yeah, I don't know. So I've been given a course of steroids to take, and we'll see where that takes us.
Yeah. Well, I've had a good week. I'm no longer sick, finally. So, touch wood that I will stay healthy for a little while as the weather starts to heat up. All right, a couple of things I want to sort of briefly start off with. The main subject of the show is it has come to light this week that the Albanese government is essentially paying off mainstream media. And again, and this payment is available until 2028, which ironically is when the next federal election is. So we are going to get into that, and I want to show you some examples of the differences in coverage that Albo is receiving or has received in the past compared to essentially his primary competitor now, which will be Pauline Hanson and One Nation. But two things that I want to briefly cover. The first one is, and this is without notice to you, have you seen much press about the Odyssey movie that is finally launched this week?
Yes.
And there's a lot of press about it. I've not seen the movie, but I just wanted to...
I was trying to get tickets. I can't get tickets at IMAX for 3 weeks.
Interesting. Right. Now, there's a lot of culture war stuff about this movie that everyone's talking about. You know, Elliot Page being in the movie, Helen of Troy being a black lady, even though in the original story and poem, the only actual description of her was that she had white arms. Now, back in those days, that would indicate her high status, because obviously if you were pale, it means you were indoors all the time, not out toiling in the fields. Picking a dark-skinned lady to play Helen of Troy, or Halante West of Troy, as she's been referred to, is an interesting move, but whatever. I don't want to focus on that. I just want to say one brief thing on it. I'm really glad that this story is coming out in this year, 2026, because the Odyssey is one of the most fascinating stories in mythology. I love the story itself. It's an amazing tale, but it also is the polar opposite to any media that we have received for the last 20 years, because what it focuses on is Odysseus only achieves anything through suffering. So the whole point of it is he needs to go through suffering to essentially repair the broken parts of his mind before he gets to then return home, reclaim his throne and his wife. And I just think that is a really interesting context in 2026, when essentially for the last decade, we've pretty much had the, the Victim Olympics. So it's all been about, I'm a bigger victim than you, therefore what I say has merit and what you say doesn't have merit. And that's what's really been jammed down people's throats for a decade. So what I would hope is that, look, number one, I hope the movie's really good, because it's such a great story and it deserves to be told with respect. And I'm sure that the movie's actually great. But number two, I would encourage anyone, particularly young people, if you aren't versed in the story, go and research the story of Odysseus, because I do think it is a really, really good story to listen to. It's fascinating, and there are some great lessons to be learned from it.
Well, we did some pre-work for this by watching Troy on the weekend.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And because basically the Odyssey comes in after Troy, and that's a banger as well. It's funny talking about the press, okay? I think a lot of it was blown out of proportion, and I wonder if it was even on purpose, some really smart marketer.
Yeah, I think it was clever marketing.
Has lit the internet fire, because so my mate was like, they're putting Elliot Page as
Odysseus.
I'm like, I don't think so, man. Like, I've seen pictures of Matt Damon. It's probably Matt Damon.
Yeah.
Right. And then there was like all this other stuff that obviously the internet then just caught fire. And I was like, Christopher Nolan, he's not that guy.
No.
He doesn't miss.
No.
He doesn't do bad movies. He only does absolute bangers. And I just don't think he's never been a culture wars guy.
Mm-hmm.
So I couldn't see him trying to prove a point over making a great movie.
Yeah, I agree.
So, but the tip is, so this is filmed with film,
okay,
not digital.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, so the key is to try and see it. It's actually made for IMAX.
Right.
So everyone's trying to get it. Yeah, I can't get into IMAX for 2 weeks.
Interesting. And look,
unless I want to sit at the front. Now, going back to what you were saying before, Victim Olympics, no one bought tickets for that shit. Like, name the last time there was a wait to get in to see a new movie. I can't remember one since COVID.
Well, that's also why Disney ended up getting rid of their new CEO and bringing back Bob Iger, the guy who used to run it, because essentially they realized they were writing stories that no one was interested in. So, like when they did the remake of The Little Mermaid, for example, and they changed Ariel's ethnicity in that movie, what they don't realize is, or what they
blacks can't swim.
Yeah. Also,
it was a ridiculous thing.
It was a ridiculous
having
premise,
it as a mermaid before, but people looking at were like, oh, that doesn't work.
But the thing, again, like the thing that, like, obviously they were trying to push a certain narrative. It is very clear. But obviously the people who were going to go and watch those movies were the, men and women who grew up on those stories when we were kids. And now we've got our own kids and we want to take them to see those movies. And the thing is, none of us are saying you can't make movies about different ethnic groups and celebrate them. Like, one of my favorite movies is Moana. Little Islander Girl. She's the hero. That's awesome. It's a great movie because it's an original concept. There's no reason why you can't just write new movies which lionize people from different ethnicities and backgrounds and all that sort of stuff. But
well, how come it's never done the other way? Why haven't we replaced why isn't Black Panther played by Jeff Goldblum?
Well, again, for a political reason, right? And that's the messaging.
Wakanda forever. I can't do Jeff Goldblum.
But that is all politics, and now hopefully that stuff's starting to go away. So yeah, I would encourage you, anyone who doesn't even know the story of the Odyssey, just go and look it up. It's fascinating. All right, second thing I want to get to, just briefly to mention. Last week we titled the show Fabian Gradualism, and there was an interaction on the media this week which displays exactly the sort of gradualism we're talking about. And it was Claire O'Neill being interviewed on Sunrise by Natalie Barr, if you can bring the clip up. And we'll just play a bit of it, and then we'll discuss it afterwards.
The Australian Labor Party is being urged to ditch the Union Jack from the Australian flag in a push by the powerful Australian Manufacturing Workers Union ahead of Labor's national conference in Adelaide this week. The proposal forms part of a, quote, blueprint for action by the union, wanting to address justice for First Nations people and getting rid of symbols of oppression, which they say includes the Union Jack. Claire, are you up for changing the flag?
I'm here in Adelaide for Labor's national conference. So this is a gathering of thousands of people who will come from all around the country to come together and debate the issues that Australians care about. And despite what you've reported there, the main focus of this conference is really about helping Australians with the things they're talking about around the kitchen table. That's the cost of living, the bills that they've got that are piling up. It's about making sure that we take those next steps to get the young people around our country fair opportunities for home ownership. It's about how we protect Medicare and aged care for Australians who will need them, and how we build a better future for the next generation. So there's going to be a lot of debate, a lot of discussion about how much the government has achieved on these matters in the time that we've been in office, but we recognise that we've got a lot more work to do, and that'll be the subject of discussion.
Yeah, and one of them, I think, is going to be the Australian Manufacturers Workers Union making a demand that we put this policy ahead, that we change the flag. Would you be up for changing it, Claire?
Look, and that's just not what the conference is about. This is really about the things. This is really about the things that Australians care about. And respectfully to all the motions that will be put forward, I'm the nation's housing minister at a moment where we've got a housing crisis that's been building for 40 years. My big focus is going to be on those questions about home ownership, about how we make sure Australians can pay the rent, and how we deal with that rising homelessness we see right around our country. So I understand that that's the news that's being reported, but I can just say really directly to Australians at home, Labor is focused on you, the things that you care about, that your family is talking about, and we're gathering to talk about what our government can do to make your life easier.
So when that one's put up, yes or no, Claire?
Again, Nat, sorry, it's not something that I've had a moment to think about. I'm focused on the housing issues that are affecting millions of people around our country, and our government is thinking about the things that are affecting the daily lives of Australians. We recognise that things are really tough for families right now, and our conference is about how we can make the lives of our citizens easier.
Yeah, but we can walk and chew gum at once, I guess. So
right.
yes or no on changing the Union Jack?
Nat,
Come on, say it. How are you
yeah,
going to the
Nat,
ground?
Nat, I'm super respectful of the question. I'm telling you, as housing minister, I don't spend my time thinking about the national flag.
Pretty easy.
I spend my time
Yes or
thinking about
no?
the fact that we've got home ownership rates plummeting through the floor for young people, and our government is making really major steps to address that
Okay,
situation.
if
And that's what the
it comes
conference is about.
Look, if it comes up, it's been in the paper today. You've got a head start. Yes or no?
And Nat, genuinely haven't given it a second thought. My
Okay,
focus is on coming to this
we've got
conference,
3 minutes left
thinking
of the
about,
segment.
thinking about the housing
Yes,
issues facing
no.
the country and how I can help people at home. And I'm really respectful of your question, but if I can say directly, I'm focused on the
So you
things
can
that
just pause it because it just continues on the same
What I'm-
fashion. So here's the point, guys. This should be a very, very simple question to answer for any Australian, especially an Australian Member of Parliament. No, we will not be changing the flag because the flag is what unites all Australians. And this government continuously talks about social cohesion and the divisiveness they see in the community. And yet, when asked a simple question of, do you want to remove the Union Jack and therefore our essentially like colonist roots, they can't just say no, we're not changing the flag. Which means this is something that they want to do. And this is all about gradually eroding our national identity. Because if we cannot unite under the Australian flag, it is easier to divide us because we have nothing to unite underneath. So I just wanted to put that out there as an example of the Fabian Gradualism. And again, don't be surprised if this is something that
we
gets...
can get her on.
Sorry?
Here's the thing we can get her on. If she votes for it, then she lied again.
Well, of course, but this is the thing. I believe that the reason why this was leaked, this is what we talk about all the time with the way the Albanese government conducts itself. They leak these stories early, then they gauge the response from the nation, then they either pretend to walk it back or they just push on with it based on opinion polls and what people are saying, because they want to keep pushing to see what they can get away with before actually committing to it as a policy. And look, a really good example of this Fabian Gradualism just happened in the UK because Keir Starmer obviously just resigned as PM and Andy Burnham has now officially taken over as the Prime Minister of the UK. And on day one, Andy Burnham said that they were removing the digital ID cards. Did you hear about this?
Yeah.
Right, so day one, Andy Burnham comes out and says, we're removing the need for digital ID cards because they know that is something that is extremely unpopular in the electorate. So you get up on day one, you say, we're removing the digital ID cards because you try to get everyone back on side and pretend that you are different from your predecessor. So all the bad juju goes away with Keir Starmer and you pretend that you're going to be a new leader who's going to do the right thing and the thing that the people want you to do. And then, I guarantee you, and you can quote me on this, the digital ID cards will be either quietly reintroduced down the track or there'll be some sort of national emergency that happens, which they then say justifies the reintroduction of the digital ID card, and it will just come back again.
Did I tell you about my digital ID story from last week?
No, I don't think you said it on the show.
So we were very critical of the digital ID, and not just for the control factor, but I said back then that it just won't work. The government's incapable of making systems that work correctly.
Yeah.
And I had an instance this week. I had no Medicare card. My Medicare card expired. So I was like, oh, I'll check the address. Well, the address is attached to my digital ID. I have to have a digital ID because I'm a director of a company.
Mm-hmm.
Check that. Yeah, that's fine. And you can't change your Medicare address because it's attached to your digital ID. So I end up having to, then I ring Medicare to get a card. It's like, well, what's your card number? I don't know. I don't have the card. Well, I'll type in my old card number. Well, it's not valid. Well, I know. I need a new one, which I don't have. Right. So I go to the shop, and the girl, I said, I tried to do this online, but it asked for, the blah, 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 blah. And it was all attached to my digital ID. So I'm surprised it's gone to the wrong address. And she goes, because she knows, she sees this all the time. So the one thing that it was supposed to do, it doesn't do that.
Yeah, it was sold to us that it was supposed to be the most efficient and easiest way to interact with government departments.
But it's actually made it inefficient and forced me to go into the place to do it.
Which just proves that what we said was correct in that the excuse they used to justify its introduction in the first place was not the purpose of the digital ID. Because otherwise, we wouldn't be doing this almost 4 years later.
And I had to reset it up because I got a new phone in that time.
Yep.
And it asked for 2 pieces of ID. So the same 2 pieces of ID that I could have used to verify my ID wherever.
Mm-hmm.
I could have just used that.
And it didn't ask you for your digital ID?
Of course not.
Wow. And obviously then you've got, actually when this drops will be on Monday. I believe Monday is when the first alert from the National Alert System is supposed to go out.
It's supposed to not work?
Which is a system that has been developed by government and apparently not in conjunction with the emergency services. And now some emergency service representatives have actually come out and said that they don't think they're going to use it because they don't think it's going to work. And this is another system that was only supposed to be $10 million to produce and was given to the same company that produced the $96 million Bureau of Meteorology site that everyone hated. And now the cost is blown out to an estimated $132 million.
So what doesn't work about, because I caught this story at the end of an ABC radio thing, and they're talking about it being a debacle. Do you know the technicals behind it?
I don't know the technicals. I just think that, what it sounds like to me is this. The government has developed this system independently of the emergency service workers. So if you've not even consulted them on the production of some sort of emergency broadcast system, how do you even know what they require to make it functional? So, look, there's concerns there, but at the end of the day, this is just another example of government wasting money and handing your taxpayer money to these bullshit consultancy firms that make millions and millions of dollars and deliver us a duck egg every single time. All right, let's move on because I want to talk about this media thing.
Hold on. Let me just close that loop a little bit.
Okay.
I really love that you brought that up. It's the money wasting thing. We can start talking about raising taxes when we've solved things like that.
Yeah, I agree.
When we save ourselves $90 million per technical project.
Yep.
Okay. Then we can start talking about raising taxes.
And again, like you are developing things using AI now. Everyone's talking about AI and the AI revolution. Is an emergency signal service not something that you could get a decent group of 5 programmers to sort out using AI in about half an hour or half a day even?
Probably.
It's something that you could build, right? I even saw, there's a guy I follow on socials and I don't remember his name off the top of my head, sorry, but he is a tech bro. And he was talking about the Bureau of Meteorology website back when this whole...
Simon Beard. This is Simon Beard. He made one.
Yeah, he made one like in a day himself using AI that worked better than the $96 million duck egg that they delivered us. So yeah, this is all the wastage stuff. And like you were saying to me earlier today, we're having a conversation about, a lot of the things that lefties care about. And lefties caring about funding for certain things. This will come up in the Pauline Hanson discussion a bit later on, but there were comments made by Pauline Hanson in regards to domestic violence funding this week. And the immediate media reaction to it, which will be completely understandable when we tell you about today's news story, was that essentially Pauline Hanson doesn't care about domestic violence and is happy to defund it. And the thing that I think one of the biggest divides between the left and the right of politics is that... so Alex has just brought up the latest Cheek Media goldmine. So let's have a quick read of this. So from Cheek Media, yesterday, Pauline Hanson said that domestic violence was a two-way street. Here are some facts to remember. Next slide. In Australia, 1 in 4 women have experienced physical or sexual violence from an intimate partner since the age of 15. For men, that figure is 1 in 14. 1 in 3 Australian men report using a form of violence towards a partner. That's a strange thing to self-report on, but anyway.
Well, how does it...
The source is the Australian Longitudinal Study on Male Health, the 10 to Men report from 2025. Nearly 10% of men in New South Wales have had some form of legal action taken against them for domestic and family violence. Almost 1 in 10 Australian men has sexually offended against children. This includes technologically facilitated and offline abuse. From the University of New South Wales and Jesuit Social Services 2023. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander women and girls are 27 times more likely to be hospitalised due to domestic and family violence. They are also 7 times more likely to be victims of feminicide. I'm really surprised they put that statistic in there.
Yeah, me too, because doesn't that mean that colonialisation was pretty good for these people?
Well, obviously they're implying that this was all done by white men.
Oh, sure.
But like, again, for a cheek media to put that stat up there, I find very interesting. Domestic violence incidents increased by 8% this year, the biggest spike since national reporting began in 2019. Now, we've also had...
What did our population increase by, Jason?
Well, our population's increased by 1.3 million people, and a significant proportion of that increase comes from migrants from countries that treat women like dirt. So I'm not surprised by an increase in domestic violence. The cost of escaping domestic and family violence has increased by 71% in 10 years. Because of inflation and government policy. Women with a disability are 40% more likely to experience domestic and family violence. I agree with that. Men in the UK are 230 times more likely to be raped than falsely accused of rape. Okay.
Read that again. Hold on,
Men in the UK are 230 times more likely to be raped than falsely accused of rape. So they're saying for men to be raped than be falsely accused of being raped. That's an interesting stat to put up there. But also it's a stat too, which I think probably ignores the whole rape gang report that was just released. But anyway.
Well, do you know what I think is actually ignored by this whole topic is gay men assaults.
Yeah.
I know heaps of gay guys that have been like raped or sexually assaulted.
Absolutely. Yeah. And what's this last slide? Oh, it's just a black screen. Anyway.
Oh, there you go.
Describing domestic violence as a two-way street is a fundamental distortion of the facts. Telling victim survivors to leave neglects the fact that this can be the most dangerous period and comes at a high cost. Pauline Hanson is once again pushing gender wars rather than fighting to end our national epidemic of gender-based violence.
No, you just did that.
Yeah.
You just did that.
Yeah.
You're creating the gender war. In this text is saying an epidemic of gender-based violence. You've just gendered it.
Yeah. So, okay. I want to be delicate with this because I have, unfortunately, too many friends, female friends, who I know who have experienced really abusive relationships in the past. And I know secondhand, at least, that leaving is one of the most difficult parts of that process.
But I want to say this though, Jason. I think we all agree that it's a problem, but this is not what that's about.
I know. I was getting to that. So the leaving is one of the hardest parts of this. However, and again, ladies, apologies if you take this the wrong way, but I've got to say, from my observation as someone who has secondhand helped female friends of mine through and out of these situations, the red flags were there extremely early, and a lot of them made choices to stay with them, even though there was blatant red flags screaming at them in the face 12, 18 months before things got really out of hand.
Sure, but I again, Jason, I don't even think this is worth getting into. It is a massive problem, and yes, men are the prime perpetrators, and these men are absolute pieces of shit, right?
Yes,
so we all agree on that. But that's not what this is. No, that's not what this is. That's not what she said. That's not what she meant.
Yeah.
And yet, this is becoming their attack vector. And I know that this is going to flow on to the next story that we've got, but Pauline Hanson's a victim herself.
Yeah.
And you've just talked about victim blaming. You've just victim blamed her.
Yeah, and you know what?
You've just victim blamed her.
You know what this is? I've just thought about this now. This is going to be the 2028 federal elections version of the abortion debate. Because we spoke about in the past, the Labor Party consistently talks about the Liberals or One Nation trying to remove abortion rights for women because they know it is a hot button topic that turns a lot of women into single issue voters who will vote purely because they believe the scare tactic that they will lose the right to an abortion if the Liberals or if One Nation is elected. We saw this in the Queensland state election. I've spoken about it ad nauseum, particularly the fact that we're almost 2 years into David Crisafulli's premiership, and it has not even come up as a policy distinction, right? So for any women who voted for Labor in the last state election because they were concerned about access to abortion, well, the history now shows that those fears were unfounded because nothing has changed in the last 2 years in regard to that. Now, getting back to the Pauline thing, this will be what she gets shoveled on her in the lead up to the 2028 election. This will turn a lot of women into single issue voters around domestic violence and the misreporting of what she said, which is becoming blatant at the moment in the media. And we'll discuss why. But ladies, I'm telling you, this is the exact same thing as the abortion thing. And I've got, again, female friends who are posting this stuff, and they don't post anything political, ever. And yet this stuff comes up and it starts getting shared in stories. And it's like, girls, you're falling for it again. Do you know why it is so expensive for women to leave domestic violence situations? It is a direct result of government policy making cost of living too expensive in this country. Do you know why they're having to talk about making cuts to domestic violence services? It is because the government has been so wasteful with your tax dollars that we are having to divert it from real victims to pay the interest bill on the bullshit that we've spent that money on.
Do you know the largest correlation between domestic violence and what is the greatest correlation is?
It's financial stress.
Financial stress.
Absolutely.
100%. So if you have a strong economy, domestic violence goes down.
Correct.
If you have a weak economy, it goes up.
And it's not just domestic violence, it's all sorts of violent crime increases when the economy turns to shit. So again, like I remember this, right? Going back to 2020, right towards the end of 2020, one of the most criticized statements that we made on this show was that closing the economy was going to have a greater negative impact on the country than COVID was. And we were called every single name under the sun. Oh, you guys are reckless. It is disgusting. Cookers. You want grandma to die. Blah, blah, blah. Or like, we've got a global pandemic and all you guys care about is money. And all we said back then was, one day, you guys are going to care about the money too. And that has all come true. The cost of everything in this country has raised by minimum 40% since 2020 as a direct result of the actions taken by the then Morrison government, but in cahoots with the Federal Labor Party as well, because they voted on all this shit together.
And they're saying that they could only deal with the information they had at the time. And that's been the best argument that I've heard from people that were, that were around that time.
Yep.
We knew.
We're
a car dealer, like a ex-fucking stay-at-home dad, gardener, and podcasters.
Yep.
We knew.
But we knew. But
can I say another thing?
Yeah, of course.
Another thing I want to shake too is the idea that just because you're throwing money at it, that you're fixing it.
Yeah.
So the idea that defunding is always bad is not true. And just like funding is not always good.
Mm-hmm.
I've said this to some, some self-proclaimed social justice warriors. One of the things I said to them was, please just make sure that you're actually doing good and not just trying to do good.
Yeah.
Because trying to do good, if the outcome is bad, is doing bad.
Correct.
Right? Actually doing good is good. And, you can argue like USAID has been the best example of like these global outcomes have increased, have been better just because we stopped giving money to a thing. We defunded stuff.
Yeah. And we also...
And funding the wrong thing sometimes incentivizes the wrong outcome.
Correct. And again, like, it's not just the money, it's who has control of where the money goes. And we covered reporting from James O'Keefe, undercover reporting, when Trump had won the election, where they got interviews undercover with high-ranking officials from USAID, and all they were talking about was them trying to shovel billions of dollars out the door before Trump took office and cut off the tap. So for them, it was all about stealing money, right?
Yeah.
And again, it does not make you a bad person. Like, one of the things that Pauline Hanson always talks about, and then she gets called like a white supremacist and everything for it, she's been saying for 20 years she wants an audit into the Aboriginal industry in this country.
Yeah.
Because we spend about $40 billion every single year trying to close the gap, and the gap never closes. And the only...
Just to put that in perspective, that's 30% more money than we spend on Queensland's entire medical system.
There you go. And the only thing she is asking is, this program was designed to make life better for First Nations and Indigenous people. Where is the money going, and why hasn't it fixed anything? You know, like you hear about all the time with like, oh, if we took, like Elon Musk is the world's first trillionaire. If we just took his money, we could we could prevent starvation in Africa. Except for the fact that you look at the fact that Africans have been given $2.3 trillion in funding for the last 40 years, and there's still people starving there. The reality is there are middlemen in the way who steal the lion's share of all of this money. So just because it makes you feel good to say we're funding these good things, it doesn't make you a good person.
Just like an exercise that you should do if you're ever giving to charities.
Yeah.
Peel a couple of layers back and actually go, they all show the distribution of where the money goes. You'd be shocked to see how much money gets absorbed by, these non-profits. Like, do you think you should get paid $800,000 a year to head a
non-profit charity? Mm-hmm.
I don't know. And especially if like the programs that they're doing make up like, a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a percent.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. That's not where I think it's right to put my money.
Like a lot of
the government does that even worse.
Yeah, and a lot of these charities, it's like 80 to 90% of the money gets spent on administration costs, which is staff wages and executive salaries. Like, you're right. So this is something that you need to check yourself on. And look, let's get back to the point of the Pauline Hanson thing. I want to talk about the reason why the media has taken a massive turn in the last couple of weeks against her. And it's blatantly obvious now. And this actually ties back into the COVID story as well, because for those of you who remember, and maybe long-term listeners of the show, you might remember, I think it was back in 2021, we found out that all mainstream media outlets in Australia were given a 100% tax offset for 2 years during COVID. And the justification... That was under ScoMo. And the justification for it was, well, there's less advertising opportunities for them because the economy is shut down. Except the fact that every single one of us was locked in our houses in front of our TV 24/7 for 2 straight years. The reality was, this was a quid pro quo. The government let the media companies not pay tax, which I think totaled about $41 million in unpaid tax from mainstream media, so that they would push the narrative that the government wanted. That was the unwritten condition behind this money. So can you bring up this that news story from this week, Alex, please?
Which, the 9 News one or the one
No, it's a little bit further up. It was a Twitter post. Let me see if I can pull it up here.
The one with Bartlett?
No. One News Australia. So it's from the 20th of July. It's pretty high up.
My bad.
That's all right. So it says One News Australia. It's got a little orange circle there. Look, while you find it, I'll start reading it. So here we go. So breaking. Labor is quietly paying journalists wages at 104 different newsrooms. Annika Wells' so that's our communications minister, $67.6 million journalism assistance fund. So just, again, think about the Orwellian... I
can't find it.
Okay, that's fine. I'll just read it out. So think about the Orwellian term that is. Journalism Assistance Fund. Why do these businesses need assistance? Like, I'm sorry, there are so many businesses going to the wall at the moment. We're in a housing crisis. Every single week a new builder goes bankrupt. Why isn't there a builder's assistance fund? But we have a journalism assistance fund. So it's part paying the wages of more than 2,000 journalists. And more than half the money went to just 4 ownership groups. Channel 9 took $16.1 million. So interestingly enough, it is Channel 9's Nick McKenzie that is currently going after Ben Roberts-Smith, just as a side note. Seven's side of the new Southern Cross Group took $11.3 million. Crikey, The Conversation, The Saturday Paper, and, ladies, Mamma Mia are all there.
Of course. News
Corp, Sky News, and The Guardian were barred from even applying. Opinion writing doesn't count as news under the government's own rules, and no funded newsroom ever has to tell its readers. So there is nothing that tells these newsrooms that they have to say, by the way, we are getting money from the government when we give you this puff piece on Albanese. The fund ran dry in 28 days. One recipient was only 2 days old, as in an entity that took money from this fund was only 2 days old. Another collapsed 5 weeks later. And then they've published the full table there so you can see who has actually received money. So this is the thing, guys. Lefties constantly talk about fascism.
Yeah.
Always. They always say, this is fascist. Donald Trump is fascist. Fascist, fascist, fascist. What fascism really is when the state colludes with private business to control the citizenry. That's what this is. So we always talk about how the ABC is essentially taxpayer-funded government propaganda, which is why we brought up that article, I think it was last week, where climate change is contributing to a rise in child marriages, right?
Yeah.
That is state-funded propaganda using our taxpayer dollars. But now, not only are we funding that slop, but we are also funding mainstream news stations as well that are supposed to be objective. And again, Sky News is not objective, right? Sky News goes out there and says, we are a right-wing station, we have right-wing perspectives, and they do not apologise for that. And that's why we criticise the ABC so heavily, because in the ABC's charter, they are supposed to be objective and unbiased, right?
Yeah.
But they're clearly not. But all of these other news outlets who've now gone and taken this quid pro quo government money, they don't have to tell you they've taken the money. They just get to do certain pieces of journalism. And this brings us back to the Pauline Hanson conversation. Because I want to give you a couple of examples, or even an example, of the difference in the way that mainstream journalists are treating Pauline compared to how they treated Albanese in the lead up to the 2022 election. So do you want to start with the Liam Bartlett clip?
Mm-hmm.
So this is Liam Bartlett, who is a genuinely decent journalist.
He's a proper journalist.
He's a proper journo. We've actually covered some of his stuff on the show before when he has actually asked the correct questions. It was Liam Bartlett, wasn't it, who had a go at Chris Bowen about not sitting down for an interview because of the renewables agenda, right? Yep. And he got a lot of press, and we played the clip on this show because we're like, go Liam Bartlett, actually holding members of the government to account for their shit. But look at this absolute gutter journalism he serves up when he has an interview with, and again, forget that it's Pauline Hanson. This is the fastest rising political force in the country, the leader of the fastest rising political force in this country. And perhaps if you're a journalist sitting in front of them, you might ask, why do you think that you're becoming so popular all of a sudden? And what is your vision for the country? What is your vision for the future of this nation that you believe you're the right person to run the nation? But this is what he serves up instead.
Realise, based on the polls so far, the closer you get to the lodge, the more you are going to come under scrutiny, your personal life. Are you comfortable with that?
My personal life has been under scrutiny for the last 30 years.
You don't think it'll get worse?
Oh, they're trying.
Who's they?
They're trying. The different media outlets.
Well, your first husband came out just a couple of weeks ago for the first time, publicly, and said you were the most dishonest person he ever knew. Must have been a bitter ending.
Rat.
Liam, I'll tell you something. I can sit here and I can defend myself, but I'm not going to, because my private life is my business. And I'm not going to get into it tit for tat for my first husband. So don't head down that path.
Because the more successful you are, the more people will go looking for people like your first husband. And the opportunity is there.
Only good.
You can tell, look at his body language. He is uncomfortable here. He doesn't.
He knows
like
it's bullshit. He knows full well what he's doing.
Because he is a confident, competent.
Of course, he's an OG. He's been around a long time.
Yeah, this is not him.
Thing about it, I found out he's still alive. I thought he was actually dead.
Okay. There's nothing else in the closet that we should know about?
If they haven't found it after all these years, especially my rise in 1996 to 1998, so they're grasping at straws and getting whatever dirt they can. Go for it, because I tell you what, I've got nothing to be ashamed of or back away from.
So I want you to put your hand on your heart here. In 30 years of public life, in and out of Parliament, is there anything at all that you regret saying or doing?
Nothing that I can think of.
Not one thing.
No.
Do you regret saying that Australia was going to be swamped by Asians?
I said, Australia was in danger of being swamped by Asians. Do I regret saying
FYI, my area of Brisbane is swamped by Asians.
Yeah. Now, look, you can pause it there because I want to contrast this, right? So, like I said before, you're sitting down with the leader of the fastest growing political force in this country, which is literally changing our political landscape. We've been a two-party country since our inception, essentially. She is changing the game. And instead of asking why that's happening, they go straight to the gutter. Now, I went searching because back in the 2022 federal election, obviously, the Labor Party had previously lost the unlosable election under Bill Shorten. ScoMo had won the next election. ScoMo was heavily on the nose by the time this federal election was rolling out. So I went back looking to see if any journalists asked Albanese about his marriage breakup in 2019. And I could only find one clip. Can you bring up the... I don't think it's that one. It's the Karl Stefanovic interview from Channel 9. It's 9.com, Albo Part 1 is what it is. And if you can go to 7 minutes and 20 seconds for the question, because the beginning of this puff piece, which is essentially what it was. Now, the reason why this is interesting to me is because this is Karl Stefanovic. Oh, is that what the link's brought up?
Yeah.
I'll copy it and I'll resend it to you to see if you can find it.
Well, no, it's. I think it's purposely blocked.
Well, isn't that funny?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're not going to be able to show this clip. Anyway, that's a massive shame. I've just resent it to you if you want to try in the background while I talk about it. But essentially, Karl Stefanovic, who obviously now is a pretty right-wing figure in the media, he's now left Channel 9, he's running his own podcast, he's now being described as a fringe far-right person. And what I find fascinating about this particular interview is the fact that, don't forget, when Karl lost his job, Albanese commented it and basically said, well, you see what happens when you get too far outside the mainstream in the media, things can happen to you. So this clip is...
Hold on, can you direct me to... So it's not bringing... I can search.
Okay, search for Albo Part 1 from 2022. And this is how you can tell it's a live show.
It's not there.
Nah, it's not there. Never mind. You guys can go and look it up and you can find it. Because essentially this video was a puff piece for Albo. And the beginning of it talked about his... they started out talking about like his weight loss. Because remember, he got real cut and lean before that election. And then they started talking about his mother, because he was raised in the single... Remember, we constantly heard this narrative around him being raised by his single mum who grew up in disabled housing and public housing and blah, 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 blah. And it was about 7 minutes and 20 seconds into it where he was asked about his marriage breakup, which happened in 2019. And essentially all Karl asks was, how did that affect you? And allowed Albo to tell the story. And Albo literally just says, it's a marriage that he didn't want to break up. He thought they were going to stay married forever. But on New Year's Eve or New Year's Day in 2019, his wife said that she was leaving. And the way that it was handled was so delicate. And it basically painted Albo as like someone you should feel sorry for because he was committed to this woman and she just decided to up and leave. But there was no pointed question about, why did she leave you, Albo? What's wrong with you, Albo? What do the people of Australia need to know about the things that you do in your private life that forced your wife to leave you, Albo? There was none of that. It was pure, Albo's the nice guy and his wife left him. But and this was in the lead up to the 2022 election. So you are going to see this stuff everywhere, guys. And this is one of the things where I want to deputize all of our listeners. Because the number one lesson that I learned from COVID was this. When the media is saying something that we know to be false, it is our imperative as rational, critical thinkers to correct the record to our friends and family.
Absolutely.
And if we do that now, this stuff isn't allowed to take root. But if you wait for too long, the majority of people in public who are just NPCs who get programmed by the media that they consume will believe all of this stuff to be true. And what the end result of that will be is that Albo will win the next election by using your taxpayer dollars to own the media. That's the inevitable result. And then we're going to get another 3 straight years of pain. Because it is painful at the moment. Like, we constantly talk about the economy now, right? Because again, all of a sudden, the economics of decisions matter. When everyone realizes far too late how painful things are when you don't do the right thing back in 2020, and now we're all paying the bill for it in 2026, right? That's going to happen again. Unless well-thinking people force their normie programmed friends into confronting the reality of the things that they believe. And I posted a Thomas Sowell quote about this yesterday because I thought it was so pertinent. So this is the quote, and I added a tagline to it. The fact that so many successful politicians are such shameless liars is not only a reflection on them, it is also a reflection on us. When the people want the impossible, only liars can satisfy. And so I put a tagline on it saying, in a society that demands moral perfection, only liars can succeed.
Yeah.
And this is the angle that they're taking with Pauline. Like, digging up a quote from a fucking ex-husband from 30 years ago and saying, oh, well, that guy said that you're the most deceitful person he's ever met. What do you have to say about that? All that is doing is trying to damage Pauline Hanson's moral standing with the public. That's all it's designed to do.
Yep.
And yet, you look at what Albanese has done since he's been in office. He has no moral standing in office. He's constantly talking about the divisiveness in this country. Well, what might create divisiveness in a nation is when the nation experiences the most significant terrorist attack on its shores in 30 years, and that was only 7 months ago, by the way, that Bondi happened. And instead of responding to that by saying, hey, this was an Islamic extremist terrorist attack, and we need to do things to combat extremism of Islamic people in this country. No, instead of responding to that, he's pushed off calls for a royal commission into it at all. He's absolved all government agencies, including the intelligence services, of any wrongdoing, because we haven't been able to have a proper inquiry into it up until this point. And now he's come out and made an announcement this week that they're spending $66 million on combating Islamophobia in this country, including putting teachings about Islamophobia into the school curriculum for state school kids.
Crazy, dude.
That is divisive.
Yeah.
Like,
they know what they're doing. They know what they're doing.
They know full well what they're doing. So look at the Pauline Hanson.
That's why. Sorry, just on that. So that, don't forget, Mike Burgess, the head of
ASIO.
of the ASIO.
Yep.
He said, and he's not changed his tune, the biggest threat in Australia is domestic terrorism.
Yeah, and right-wing extremism.
Right-wing
extremism.
But all the policies that are coming in are enough fuel to fire that.
Well, don't forget, they also just banned the White Australia Party from registering for the election. They've had to disband that party. And again, do I agree in the White Australia policy? No, I don't. But do I agree with freedom of speech and people's right to have their own opinions on subjects? Yes, I do. So how is it that we can literally ban a party like the White Australia Party in this country? Meanwhile, we're now trying to combat Islamophobia. I'll tell you what might combat Islamophobia. If Islamic leaders came out and denounced these people and anyone like them. Like a group, so one of the things you hear about constantly with even like the domestic violence thing, right? A lot of women rightly say men need to hold each other to account for this stuff. And we do, right? If there are men in our groups or in our circle who exhibit any of these sorts of behaviors, good men like us will typically pull them aside and call them out for it, right? Also, good men like us would love it if the laws got way more relaxed like they were maybe 20 years ago, where when you hear about a man threatening a woman or something like that, you could show up at his doorstep and beat the fuck out of him, and he would know exactly why it happened. And he would know that if he pulls that shit again, something like that would happen to him again. We can't do that anymore. Nowadays, if you do that sort of vigilante justice, you'll go to prison for longer than the abuser will.
Yep.
Right? So the law has taken that ability away from people. But what will combat Islamophobia in this country is if like popular and prolific Islamic leaders came out, denounced Bondi, denounced anyone who participates in that sort of extremism in this country, and pledges their own allegiance to the Australian flag. Hey, this is our country too. We belong here. We love this country. We love everyone in it. Right? We keep being told Islam is the religion of peace, but you don't see these leaders coming out and denouncing the extremism in their own ranks. That might help solve Islamophobia in this country.
But also, too, the biggest thing, the only way to actually fix it, and something you say all the time, is like we need one set of rules, one set of laws that everyone has to abide by.
Yep.
And we don't have that.
Now, I also want you to consider this. Look at what they've done with the Pauline Hanson domestic violence story. They're essentially accusing Pauline Hanson of victim blaming victims of domestic violence. Now look at the way that Albo has treated the Islamic community in the wake of Bondi. Islamic extremists killed 15 people on our most famous beach in this country. And yet, the only remedy has been given to that same community.
Yeah.
So you want to talk about victim blaming? The Albanese government is now telling non-Islamic Australian citizens, you are not allowed to speak ill against Islam in this country, even though the majority of people don't have a problem with Muslims. They just have a problem with Muslim extremism, which brings terrorism to our shores. But you're not even allowed to say that.
Yuri Bezmenov, man. Yuri Bezmenov, he told us all, this is how they dismantle the West.
It's the demoralization of the people. And I was talking to a friend of mine about this week, and this is one of the things which is, it's hard to grapple with, is that this stuff didn't happen overnight, right? Last week we talked about Fabian Gradualism. This has been gradually drip-fed into our society over the last 20 to 30 years, inch by inch, drip by drip. So that in reality, it took us 20 years to get to this point. It's probably going to take 20 years to fix it. And the only reason why it's going to take so long to fix it is because you need people of my age who've got young children to actually ensure they are not indoctrinated into this Fabian Marxist bullshit, right? It'll be our generation's kids which come through rejecting all of that nonsense and actually rebuilding this nation into what it was in the country that we grew up in the 90s. Like, for young people, you have no idea how good this country was back in the 90s. And I know I just sound super old when I say that, but you honestly have no idea because this is the only Australia you've ever known that you've ever grown up in. But this country was amazing. It was going places. Everyone was making money. And I mean, you could go and it's a thing that people criticize the boomers about all the time, right? We constantly talk about intergenerational equality and how the boomers have all this wealth and this money. Yeah, because the boomers could literally have the dad go and work in a factory job on just the average salary, and that average salary would fund the house, 2 cars, a stay-at-home wife, 2 kids, a dog, and a holiday every year. That's what this country used to be. And
it's funny seeing old programs from the 90s where every normal family would have a beach house.
Yeah, that's what this country used to be.
Yeah.
But due to government policy, it is not that anymore. Mm-hmm. And this is the thing that, this is interesting. Shout out to Laura, longtime viewer of the show. She messaged us on Instagram yesterday. Oh yeah, and I should remind people, please, if you do follow the show, but you don't follow us on Instagram, please give us a follow on Instagram. We share heaps of stuff which is complimentary to the show on there. Please jump on the audio platforms that you listen to the show on. Give us a 5-star review because we are starting to get pushed out to more people, and I'd love for you to help us build the show and get the message out there. And look, if you can build the show, it allows us to have conversations with people that you may not wish to have yourself. So it might be helpful in that regard. So anyway, getting back to that whole thing of Fabian Gradualism, right? 20, 30 years ago, this country was completely different to what it is now, which means we can fix it and we can change it back to where it should be. But that takes us being honest with each other. And so this friend of mine, Laura, who messaged the platform, she was asking me my thoughts on her daughter has just received a notice that they're going to be learning about democracy at school.
Mm-hmm.
And part of it was talking about civic goals. And she had concerns because obviously she has seen the civic goals of our government and she's concerned that maybe they might try to feed her child propaganda at school about civics. And I said, look, in a way, this is a really good thing because young people do need to learn about the fact that we do live in a democracy. And the whole goal of democracy is supposed to be that we as a collective people decide the things we like in society and the things that we don't. And we proceed forward with the things that we like and we get rid of the things that we don't like. And that is how we create a beautiful, cohesive society over time. So I said, I'd be interested to hear if that's what the messaging is in this civics class, because that is a good thing. But the problem is, and look, maybe I'm naive to this, but I felt like the country that I grew up in, the civic goals were largely decided by our national identity as Australians. You would meet in front of, at the barbecue on the weekend and everyone would shoot the shit and talk about things and whatever. But we're a high trust society. Everyone largely agreed on a lot of the things that we were doing and how we wanted to move forward and make the country prosperous. And our politicians responded to that. So our politicians said, this many people think this certain thing, therefore we're going to have to do that thing because that's how democracy is supposed to work, particularly representative democracy, which is what we claim to have in Australia. You elect representatives to represent your will in the parliament. That's how it's supposed to work. And the thing that I've said many times over the last few years on this show is that has been completely flipped on its head over the last 20 years. And we no longer, as a country and as a community, get to decide what our civic goals are. Our civic goals are decided for us by elites and politicians at the highest level. And then they take our taxpayer money and they give it to mainstream media and the ABC. And they get them to psyop us into believing that their civic goals are actually what we believe and what we want to go for. And then we vote for them to push forward these civic goals that they decided and psyoped you into believing.
Other techniques like they will decide what we speak about. So let's argue over these two things, even though the thing that we want is over here.
Correct.
Like, which one of these two? Which one of the two shit sandwiches do you want?
Yeah, exactly right. And that's the thing. So for us as a country, we need to collectively decide without the politicians what it is that we care about, what it is that we want, and we need to start acting appropriately and voting appropriately. And so like the Claire O'Neills of the world, right? She is clearly a Fabian. The way that she handled that interaction with Natalie Barr, without just saying, hey, Nat, we ain't changing the flag. This is our flag. I love this country. I was elected to represent this country. We're not changing the flag. Instead of just saying that, she's left it up to debate. And debate means she probably wants to change the flag. Because if you change the flag, guess what? You get to decide what our national identity is. Not the people. You get to decide. And then you get to psyop everyone in the community into falling in line with the national identity that you've decided Australia has, as if that is any different to colonialism.
Yeah. I think it needs to go back more about individual liberty. I think we really need to figure out what you want in a selfish way.
Yeah.
And I think you need to start crafting you and your family's life like that, because the system is not there to help you.
No. And this starts, again, like I said, the learning from COVID is this. In the conversations that you have with your friends, even if they are far lefties and you feel like they're just too difficult, you need to approach them with the love that you would about any other issue, right? If you can see a friend of yours is struggling with a certain thing in their life, if you really love that person, you'll have a talk to them about it and you'll try to help them through it. You need to approach this in the same way. Because the reality is, COVID only got as bad as it did because people were psyoped into not speaking to each other about it. Because they othered anyone who spoke against the government narrative. We copped it. Many other people copped it as well. But we kept talking about it because it is the right thing to do. And like Odysseus himself, the only way you achieve great things is through suffering. So if you choose not to suffer through the difficult conversation with your friend, well, you will reap what you sow.
Yeah, you don't deserve a good life.
Absolutely.
And on that note,
Thanks very much for joining us, guys. We'll see you all next week.
bye.